I thought I was so alone. I thought nobody else is going through this. I am the only one. And then when I did start, talking to people or even looking online, I discovered what narcissism was, and light bulbs went off. I said, oh my gosh, this is a thing. And I realized, as I said earlier, that there are a lot of people that are not safe and they are so fearful. But what if I could put myself in a situation where I am safe, which I am now, and where I have the ability and the resources to speak up about it.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. Absolutely delighted to be joined today by a guest all the way from Illinois over in the States. We have mother, wife, author of Gasping for Air, and survivor, but most important, the voice for victims of narcissistic abuse. Welcome to the show today, Dana Diaz. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And we had a little chat, I believe it was yesterday, just in preparation for this, and to get to know the story and know where you're coming from. And absolute delighted to be able to use a platform that I've got to help share some stories and maybe help some people perform in a slightly different way than maybe some of my previous episodes as well. So maybe to kick things off, could you give us a little bit about yourself in terms of what's got you to where you are today?
Yes, absolutely. I am an unwilling volunteer, apparently, to the world of narcissism. I was raised by a narcissist that my mother married, and she enabled it, even tried to force me into submitting to the narcissistic stepfather. And then I ended up marrying a narcissist, a different kind of narcissist, however. So I kind of didn't see that coming. And then I've only been a few years out of that, thought life was going to be okay. And a friend of we must have been friends 15, 16 years. I had no idea she was also a narcissist. So I think I'm a magnet for it. And fortunately have a degree in journalism and psychology. So I have taken it upon myself to speak up for other victims. Certainly the things I have been through, are not pleasant, but many other people, I'm hearing stories that are absolutely horrific. But those people are not safe or will never be in a situation and potentially can't even verbalize or understand their situations enough to really speak up about it. So I've taken that role upon myself, and self-designated myself as the voice for victims of abuse. It needs to be, dealt with in society. People don't like to talk about negative things. Polite society says you don't talk about it at all, but it needs to be brought up because there's no criminal consequences for the things that are done to victims. And we need to start sharing and voicing, what's actually going on in the world.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you being sort of, I don't want to use the word brave, because it takes a certain amount of courage, but it's the strength of character is what I'm trying to get at, is to be able to go, something has happened to me, I'm going to make positive out of this, not only for myself, but I'm going to help others. And I think that's the bit that inspired me to get you on the show, really, is that from tragedy can come some good things, and things can move forward. So just for my audience and also for me in some ways here, can you explain to me what is narcissism and what is narcissistic abuse, and how does that differ from other things that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will do my best. So everybody forgive me, because there are people that, study narcissism for decades of their life, and it's not a simple thing. From my experience, lifelong experience, narcissism is basically when somebody has an overinflated idea of themselves, which causes them to target usually one person, maybe two, but usually it's one person, that there's all this terminology, but they're basically getting the supply, they call it,
Right.
from their so-called target. Supply being whatever it is. It might be servitude, it might be financial gain, status, sexual, things.
Mm.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
It could be just general feeling of power, in that they control and bully and manipulate the person so that they, feel big and tough and strong. But narcissism, it depends who you read and who you talk to. There's various different types of narcissists. What we're talking about, and I want to be very clear here, when I'm speaking, I'm talking about malignant narcissists, which are exactly what it sounds like, bad narcissists. Narcissists that are intentionally causing harm to another human being in order to gain whatever it is they're seeking. Because there are people that have narcissistic qualities and might even be narcissists, but they're not hurting anybody.
Right.
I know somebody who I'm laughing because she's almost comical. She really loves herself, like really loves herself, loves her body, loves the way she looks, the selfies, the Facebook, and she works hard on that body. She looks great for her age. And we all just have to laugh. But she's not bothering anybody with it. She just is really feeling herself. But the narcissists that I have dealt with and where we get to the abuse is, again, where there is intentional harm.
Right.
It could be emotional harm, physical harm, again, sexual, unconsensual sex,
Yeah.
or I've seen a lot in the sexual realm with narcissists. Money is a big thing. So when they're trying to hurt somebody or manipulate somebody to get those things is where we're falling into narcissistic abuse. But again, it can cause tremendous harm. Just very briefly touching upon my story, my book, Gasping for Air, talks about how in this 25-year relationship with my ex-husband, there were all those things right from the beginning, all the red flags. I still fell for it. I thought I was being noble staying then after we had a son together. But what really was the straw that broke the camel's back is when I got sick. I did not realize that taking all that emotional abuse and the physical threat and all the financial stuff that was going on, it actually created a lot of havoc in my body, and the stress hormone cortisol was pumping at such high levels in my body that I actually went autoimmune and developed a lung disease. Because of, my body thought there was something inside of it that it had to eradicate, like a cancer or something. So this is something that I'll have to live with the rest of my life, because of, basically, him emotionally, sexually, financially, all this abuse. People say, did he ever lay a hand on you? He raised a hand to me. He raised a crowbar to me. He shot a gun. There was a knife. Did he ever actually harm me with these things? No. But I'm now living the rest of my life with physical consequences because of the fear of living with him.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's terrible that anybody has to go through this, but there's I know of people, friends or contacts who have experienced narcissistic abuse. Not sure I knew the name of it at the time, but one of the things that that intrigued me that I'd never even thought of before, and you've touched upon it here. I think we can all imagine physical abuse. We can imagine sexual abuse, even emotional abuse. But I think that's maybe something I'd like to understand a bit more. But it's the financial abuse that was a new one to me.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means to you and maybe your experience of that?
Oh yeah, that was a big thing. Every couple has those conversations about money, but very early on with me, and I mean I think even the first night that we actually sat and had a conversation together and getting to know each other, he brought up how he really wanted more. He wanted a house. He wanted a nice car. He wanted all these things in life. I looked at it as ambition, but at the same time, you know, things progress very fast with narcissists. Once they decide they want you, they read you very quickly, so they know how to get you.
Right.
So once he had me, so to speak, and he saw that, here I was raised by a narcissist, and the narcissist that raised me, my stepfather, had Corvettes, and he had nice watches and cameras and beautiful home, and all the things of status and things that said, look at me, I have money, because he was a very showy and arrogant narcissist. So part of me wonders if my ex saw that and thought that maybe at some point he would be entitled to that, either through inheritance or, through some association with me. He just didn't know that, that was not of interest to me, and that I really didn't have much of a relationship and still don't with my mother and stepfather. Regardless, in our marriage, it was little things, but it was what people need to understand. It wasn't that something happened once in a while. It was every single day. For example, at one point, he was laying on the couch one night. He said, I want to go buy a chainsaw tomorrow. I said, why do you need a new chainsaw? You have one. What's wrong with yours? He says, well, I just want a new one. And I said, well, I just want the Hope Diamond, but that's not going to happen. I mean, be realistic. I said, I just paid the bills. And because he was so frivolous and careless with money, we were not just paycheck to paycheck. It was like pennies left. Right. I had $3 and some change left in our checking account after writing out the bills, right. Our mortgage, our lights, our phone. I don't care. I'm going to buy the chainsaw tomorrow. You better figure it out. That's what he told me. And I said, well, I can't figure it out. I don't have any other money anywhere. I need you to be reasonable about this. Long and short of it, he went and bought the chainsaw the next day. Got a brand new chainsaw. Didn't use it. Didn't need it. He bought it because he wanted it. Right. All of the checks I had written for our bills, well, they were returned for non-sufficient funds. So then I had the late fees on all those bills. I had the non-sufficient funds fees for the bank, and then the daily charge because I didn't have funds to replace those with. But again, this is one story in 25 years of this happening constantly. He'd show up one day with a four-wheeler. How are we going to pay for that? Why did you think it was okay to buy that without asking me? I'm your wife. Well, I wanted it. Okay, well, usually you have to go get a job and earn things. And he would always talk also of he didn't want to work. Well, who does want to work? Win the lottery, then go do something, invent something brilliant that we can live the rest of our lives comfortably. No, he just stopped working after having a herniated disc. He had to have it surgically relieved. That was about 4.5 years before the end of our marriage, but he never went to work after that. Tried to claim he was disabled, even though he was walking around doing things around our house and riding his four-wheelers and dirt bikes and everything else just fine. And I continually appealed to him. I said, I am working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am going weeks and weeks and weeks without a day off. Please help me. Please help me. Please get a part-time job. Please do something. He told me no. He said it was my turn to support him. And I thought, his turn? He never supported me. I had worked throughout our entire relationship. He always halved the bills. Whatever the bills were, I had to pay my half to him. He didn't like my name on his checking account. So we didn't even have a joint checking account because he wanted to be in control of his money, but he also made sure he had access to my money, right. Had the password for my account. So these are the things of financial abuse. For the last 4.5 years of our marriage, I was the primary breadwinner. And he literally laid on the couch and watched TV most of the day, every day, and continued to spend our money. And even after our divorce, believe it or not, he was forced to get a job. But he had just secured the position. And in our country, at least, you need to be on your job at least 2 years normally to be able to qualify to get a mortgage to buy a house.
Yeah.
Well, he gets a job, and maybe a week later, I find out he's buying a house. Well, how are you buying a house? Well, we filed taxes as a married couple. We filed jointly. I was the only one working and making money.
Mm.
Guess what he used to buy a house? The taxes that were my income,
Wow.
but his name was on them because we were married filing jointly. So, it was like, even though our marriage was over, he was still taking. And then there was an issue with the IRS after that, where I was paying quarterly taxes because I was running a business. And the year after our divorce, he filed taxes before I did and had the quarterly taxes that I paid into the government applied to his taxes solely. And I just finished a 2 or 3 year fight with our government and finally won. It was not even a month ago I got the letter saying, we have figured out that it was supposed to be applied to yours. This is done. It's over with. But it never ends. It feels like I thought it was over when we divorced, but it just goes on and on and on.
Wow. No, it's interesting. The take that I had heard of through someone else is essentially that the husband in this case not only had full control of the finances, so it's like you don't get access. I'll cover all the bills. You don't get to see what's going on behind the scenes, but also had a lot of even the property that they owned was in a trust, a family trust, that was associated with his family. And all the bills were in his name, the utility bills and things like that. So that actually, when the lady decided that enough was enough, she's going to move with her children again, feeling as if I can't move because of the children. Got to have that stability.
Right.
One of those elements of I can't leave this is because no utility bills in your name, no property actually in your name because it's in a trust that isn't is tied up somewhere else, and all the arguments in the first seemed like really good arguments for tax reasons, for for ease of use. I'll do all of that and things, and it's a really slippery slope, and it prompted a conversation between me and my wife, which is I do most of the financial pieces here, but I'm not I want to make sure that we've got things like should anything happen, I don't want to leave you in that situation. So if people are finding themselves in a situation where they are on reflection have no control, if things were to step away, would you have anything in your name? Would you have anything that you could claim half of?
Right. And that's the thing. It's all
be,
about control. It's exactly what you said, because that's what I encountered in the first half of my marriage, where he didn't want a joint checking account. I could not have access to the money. And, he traveled for work and was only home 2 or 3 days a month. So, it was very difficult. And at a certain point, he finally said, fine, I'll add your name that you can write checks. But I had to go to him, like, as if I worked for a corporation, and say, here's the bills, I wrote them out, can you sign them? It's asking permission. And I have encountered so many people with their stories. Several people have come to me and said that they have to provide receipts, even for just running and getting, some milk from the store, or they ran out of sugar, simple things. They have to provide the receipt, and that's just, it's so needless and unreasonable, and causes this, these are the simple things that cause fear in the person that, is being made to do these things. It makes you feel worthless and incompetent and unworthy and less than, and all these awful things. And that's where it starts to affect your, your self-image, and your self-esteem, and it affects your emotions and your mental stability. So, again, it's these insidious little daily things that happen constantly over time that really cause the problems.
And so, what were the? It's a classic question of what was the tipping point? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? And maybe there isn't one, but I'm as interested in that, but also what sort of prompted you to then go on and do something so positive in terms of writing the book and being that voice for people. So, uh, what was it for you?
Well, it is, you're exactly right. I already shared, for me, it was getting sick.
Right.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back, because otherwise I hate to say we'd probably still be married,
Right.
because I felt very strongly that I knew who he was before I married him. I even talk in the book about the wedding day when they started playing the wedding march and everybody stood up and turned around. I didn't want to walk down that aisle. I
Right.
literally thought, what the heck am I doing? I don't
Mm.
want to marry him. We're going to get divorced. I knew that. But I went through with it, the
Yeah.
pressure.
Mm.
I figured this is what I wanted. Now I'm getting it. Now I'm in it. I knew who he was. So now I got to deal, kind of like make your bed and lie in it.
Right.
Um, but the straw that broke the camel's back, and the problem is, a lot of people, will tell a victim, and I've heard it a million times, well, if it was so bad, why didn't you leave?
Yeah.
Narcissists, there's this constant push and pull with them. Um, there's terms that we use like breadcrumbing. When they feel like, they're losing you a little bit, or, maybe you're pulling away, you're getting emotionally distant, physically distant. Suddenly that's when the flowers come and the steak and lobster dinners, and, oh, you really wanted this, whatever it is, this
Mm.
purse or this car, something really extravagant. And then you think, oh, they really do love me. They just must be really, overwhelmed with work or stressed about life. And, you make these
Mm.
excuses because suddenly they love you. And then a few days go by, they ignore you, they treat you badly, maybe even things, holes are being punched in the wall, doors are being slammed, but then they love you again. They caress your cheek when you're sitting and watching TV. And so there's this, it literally is a love-hate relationship. But every time you lose hope, they show you that other side of them that they're capable of.
Mm.
That's wonderful and charming and funny, and you laugh, and this is the person you love. It's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
So the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of us, there is going to be that one thing. And for me, it was getting sick. I started feeling ill around 2016, 2017, but it just spiraled downhill so fast, to the point where I knew I needed to see a doctor. He was not open to me seeing a doctor because it cost money, and only he was allowed to go to the doctor and have tests that cost money, not me. So I made excuses. I suffered and dealt with it, but it got to the point where it was actually November 3rd, 2018. I'll never forget it because we had a terrible, terrible fight that night. He drank a lot. He was drunk that night. We had a terrible fight. He took advantage of me sexually, and I was not wanting that to happen, but it happened, and it was awful. And I just, within 2 weeks after that, my body, I dropped 15 pounds. I was down to 93 pounds. I was skeletal. People were stopping me and asking me what was wrong, because my face, I had a grayish pallor, and I just had no energy, and nothing was working. I kept getting dizzy, blacking out. Even while I was driving, once I blacked out. And so I went through test after test with doctors, cardiologists, the neurologists, that, all the sleep study. And that's when they eventually figured out that I have this very rare lung disease called upper airway resistance syndrome, that the doctor likens to having COPD, which is a lung disease,
Yep.
as well as fibromyalgia, with all kinds of other fun symptoms all at the same time. So it's not just a lung disease, and is actually also a sleep disorder. It's categorized as such because it's very common in victims of abuse, and that's why it's not recognized. A lot of doctors aren't even aware of this lung disease. But that's the other thing about narcissists, is they don't like you to sleep. They will interrupt your sleep on purpose, constantly, every night, so that it kind of creates this irritability in you, so that when they've told everybody what an awful person you are irritable, and you're tired, and you just get, you have no patience for them. So
Right.
you might snap and show the side that they're saying. It also creates confusion, brain fog, all these things so that you can't think clearly. Well, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. Yeah, I heard you.
Right.
No, I didn't. You're too tired. You probably just can't focus, so
Right.
there's all these manipulative tactics they use, but for me, all of this was going on at once. And,
Mm.
and then by the end of 2018, I was still not doing well and had some tests. And the doctor looked at me and he said, your body is shutting down. Your body is shutting down. Your heart is barely beating. Your blood pressure is so low. Your heart rate is so low. They were talking about putting a stent in to help it beat.
Mm.
My muscles, I couldn't sit for 5 minutes. Otherwise I'd feel like I was so stiff. I would be like 100-year-old person trying to
Mm.
stand back up. Just so many things were happening. And I just thought, my God, my body is shutting down. I'm 40 some years old.
Mm.
This shouldn't be happening. And I don't want to die.
Right.
So I had to make a change. It wasn't worth it at that point to try to be noble or to hang in there for my son, which is what I was trying to do.
Right.
And in the end, the joke was on me, I guess, because I came home from work one afternoon and he was gone.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's a typical narcissist thing. His ego couldn't be, yes, he couldn't be hurt by his wife leaving him with his son. He had to leave me, and he told people I was harassing him and I was abusive and I was this and that. And I didn't even care at that point. He was out of the house. He was gone. I was like, thank you. It relieved me because I was worried that I would never get him out of the house. Yeah. So.
Wow. There's a lot to take in on that one. I really do feel for you, but you've taken that and you've taken that story and you've shared that story through the book.
Yes.
So who's the book for? So typically in this section of the podcast that I'm asking, who are you helping and how do you help them? I mean, you're helping by sharing the story and giving that ability. So tell us a bit more about the book and what got you there and what's the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, the book actually resulted from me keeping a notebook, a record of all the things that I was being told were not said and were not being done. That's gaslighting.
Yep.
So I kept a notebook because I honestly thought maybe it is me. Maybe I am going crazy. Maybe I am seeing things a different way. So I started keeping a notebook, date, time, what happened, what was said very briefly. And honestly, one day it just came to me. I thought, I am a writer and a speaker.
Yeah.
I need other people to understand what's going on because I'm showing up at, my son's golf meets or when he was little, the t-ball games with cupcakes and smiling and acting like we're this, even with family, show up on the holidays. Look at us. Here we are with the presents. Nobody knew. Nobody had any idea because I couldn't let on. So I thought I was so alone. I thought nobody else is going through this. I am the only one. And then when I did start, talking to people or even looking online, I discovered what narcissism was and light bulbs went off. I said, oh my gosh, this is a thing. And I realized, as I said earlier, that there are a lot of people that are not safe and they are so fearful. But what if I could put myself in a situation where I am safe, which I am now, and where I have the ability and the resources to speak up about it, which I am, and this is what I'm doing, so that I can, one, let other victims know they're not alone and there is a way out. I want to prove to them that, you can have a beautiful life afterward. There is life on the other side of it if you can get out safely, and that's the key. But the other target that I'm going with the book is for mental health professionals, and people that work with victims of abuse, maybe in shelters or in government offices. People might not understand. I know even my husband, he grew up with a lovely family, very close knit. he doesn't, he sees everything, that I'm still, repercussions that we're still dealing with because I do have a son with my ex, but he still will never understand. And a lot of people don't understand if they haven't been through it. So
Mm.
I was very fortunate again to have a college education in journalism and psychology. So I was able to figure out my situation. And, even though people's experiences differ here and there, I'm able to give perspective and verbiage that maybe some victims are not able to give to their doctors or therapists or counselors or whoever it is that they're trying to seek, some help from. So, I've been fortunate. One of my book signings that I had out of state, I did have a mental health professional come and she said, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, because now I understand so much better where a victim is coming from, because she said that is primarily what I do, is work with victims of abuse. So
Right.
that made me so happy, and I could have talked to her for hours, but these are the people that need the book. But honestly, I also have a lot of people telling me it's just a really good read. If you want to read like a thriller, like, about a really awful, dysfunctional, toxic relationship, and you're sitting on a beach or going away somewhere, I've heard it's a good read. Everybody says it's a page turner. It didn't feel that way when I lived it, but I'm glad that I can provide the entertainment at least for those looking for that aspect.
Yeah. No, wonderful. I mean, as I say, just the ability to make something so positive, and I love the connection there between not only going out and letting victims have something that they can relate to, and maybe the people who are maybe teetering on the edge, going, "Can I do something about it? Can I not?
Right.
What am I the only one?" And maybe this gives them some confidence to take some steps.
Exactly.
But what I really love as well is that other connection that you had with the health service professionals, and those
Yes.
carers, because as you say, that's where you can leverage. If you can get that knowledge into some of those people, they are touching so many lives in that space. Then your goodness and your good message can be accelerated and leveraged across those. So
Exactly.
fantastic news.
Exactly.
One little snippet that I came across that I was intrigued by is,
okay,
I believe the chapters are song, their titles are song lyrics or song titles.
They are all song titles. So I tried to explain that a little bit in the foreword of the book. So when I was a little girl, again, I was raised by a narcissist and a mother who just looked the other way. And I was, as you can imagine by talking to me, I was a very strong-willed little girl who spoke my mind. And I learned very quickly that came with consequences I didn't like. I could not be controlled. I always said I was the horse that couldn't be broken. But I learned very quickly at a very young age not to speak my mind so directly. So what I did, I loved music. I loved music. And so I would hear a song and I would kind of associate it with a person or with a situation. And it's just kind of, I guess it seems so juvenile that here I'm 47 years old, but it's almost a little game, that if a song reminds me of something or somebody, that's what I apply to it. Because I didn't get in trouble as a little girl if I was humming a song or singing the lyrics. It was just a song. But to me, it meant so much more. And honestly, it was a coping mechanism for me. It got me through. Music got me through everything. And it's still very important to me today, because I love whether it's the melody or often it's the lyrics that say the things that I didn't know how to express myself. So I had a lot of fun, because a lot of the song titles I already knew, because that, like I said, I've always associated certain situations with songs, but there were some chapters that I wrote that didn't have a song association. So it was fun to kind of play with music a little bit. And you get to know my personality a little bit. Somebody that I do know who actually is a musician that did read the book. I just saw her a couple weeks ago, and she said, boy, I know your sense of humor, because some of those song titles, they were kind of cheeky. It could be some awful, horrible, thing that happened in the chapter, but, it would be like a little 1920s song, that had a really light melody. So it was fun to do that. But, you have to lighten things up. We all, everybody has a story. Everybody has been through stuff, but
Mm.
you want to grow and you want to learn. And like I said, it's not that I don't cry some days or at some memories, but we also have to show people that you can live life and that it's okay.
Yeah.
You can get through it.
So, could you give us a little tip, one or two of those titles? What are some of the intriguing ones that you see in there that, just to get people?
Well, okay. So my favorite one, and it's terrible, but my favorite one, I have a chapter, the end of the chapter, I'll just give a little blurb. He went to a New Year's Eve party, but he didn't take me because he didn't take me anywhere a lot of times, and I knew he was doing things he shouldn't be doing.
Right.
He came back so drunk that night. He actually told me that he was doing things he shouldn't be doing with another female, and that she told him that she'd never seen such a big dick before. So the name of that chapter is, there's their old rock group Metallica.
Oh yes, big
okay
fan. Yeah.
So Metallica, they did not release the song on an album, but they call it the Dick Song. And they did it on YouTube, and it's just a riff, and they just repeatedly sing with the riff, you're a dick, you're a dick, you're a dick. I just, again, that's my sense of humor. So that to me is the fun one. Gosh, there's so many. I mean, everyone means something to me, every one of those songs. The other one people had fun with was the chapter where I go to the divorce. I was wearing a red dress that you'd wear to a nightclub for my divorce because I was so excited. Right. It had sequins on it. It was bright red. I had stiletto heels. I looked ridiculous in the middle of the day going to a lawyer's office in this getup, but I called that chapter Sorry Not Sorry.
Right.
That's the Demi Lovato song.
Yeah.
Because that was just the song that I remember hearing on the radio that day, and I had my club dress on and I was feeling good. And even all the people at the lawyer's office, they said, we've never congratulated or seen somebody so happy to get a divorce. I was smiling. And so yeah, we had fun with them. And there's some depressing, awful songs too, because there were some things that happened that weren't nice. But again, it's really funny. People can find the playlist on YouTube. I do have it in order of chapters. So you can either just listen to it or listen to it with the book. But for me, music's a big thing. And I am in the process of publishing the prequel, which talks about growing up being raised by a narcissist. And those chapter titles are also songs. And I am currently writing the sequel to Gasping for Air, which talks about the friend that turned out to be the narcissist and ruined my happily ever after. But I'm still doing well. She didn't ruin it too bad. Got through it.
No, I love that. And I think I do a lot with music as well. If I'm facilitating something, for instance, I like to have a little bit of music in the background. And
yes,
I was doing one recently, and I spent so much effort just making the playlist for this particular day that we were doing. You know, when it was coming to coffee time, I would have Coffee and TV by Blur, and
I love it.
And then the one that I'd realised how much older than the audience I was. I always like to have a song where it's like come back to the room because it's now the break is over.
Okay.
So and you may not even know Pat O'Banton back in the 90s, sort of pop reggae, shall we say? And there's a song called "Baby Come Back," and
I do know that one. Yes, I love it. Yeah, see, so you and I think the same. That's the sense of humor. I love it.
And I was playing it and loving it, and people were getting into it, and I was like, right, who knows who that is? And I looked around the room, and there's all these, like, it was a group of graduates or so, sort of in their early 20s, and they were looking at me, and I was like, no, dear, you're showing your age here, Paul. There we go.
That's okay. That's okay. I've got you.
So maybe a slightly different question then, in terms of if you, and maybe that you're answering the question in what you're doing right now, but if you could help anyone in the individual or group of people with the skill set and the approach that you've got, who would you want that to be?
You know, I think I would have to stick like with what I said. I think mental health professionals I think they're the key here, because victims, it's very, I mean, many people came to me throughout the years. They saw through the facade, but you couldn't have got, I wouldn't leave my son. I wouldn't like, I wouldn't do it.
Mm.
I think mental health professionals are the key for understanding and being able to help and say the right things, and help other people see situations a little bit more for what they really are, and hopefully get them out before, you know, they end up like me, suffering physical consequences, or I mean, I hate to say, some people don't make it out at all.
Yeah.
And we don't like that to happen. So mental health professionals, and I also think that they would be, you know, a step in the right direction for our criminal justice system,
Right.
to take it a little more seriously,
Mm.
you know, in whatever testimonies and such they can provide to the courts, because
Right.
the courts really don't do a whole lot. You know, unfortunately, at least here in the US, but I have spoken to people in the UK that there's a lot that needs to be done, even Australia, all over the world. It's just not something that's recognized. You know, if I was shot or stabbed or punched,
Mm.
the authorities would do something, but when they can't physically see evidence,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to get your justice.
Indeed. And if we flip that question around a little bit then and said,
Okay.
if you were able to sit down and have a coffee or have a drink, have a meal with somebody to learn from them and help you be at your best, who would you want that to be?
That's a loaded question. I mean, I need a whole group of people.
You can have a group. It's all good.
I mean, honestly, you know, I'm a Christian, so Jesus was a human being. Honestly, I just want to ask him, like, what happened? What are we doing wrong? What are we supposed to be doing differently? Gandhi, I mean, you know, uh, just somebody that can give enlightenment and tell me what I can say to people, what can I do to change, because I just think people, um I mean, it's not just narcissists. I mean, I hate to get on my soapbox a little bit, but all the things going on in the world, you know, if people were just simply kind to other people on social media, in person, and a little, well, a lot less selfless, I think things would be better overall in this world, and it wouldn't be such a cruel place. And I know that sounds so idealistic. Um, One more person I absolutely love, if anyone is in the realm of narcissism and narcissistic abuse, Dr. Ramani. She's here in the US, does a lot of YouTube and social media. She is phenomenal. And I have read and listened to many experts in narcissism, but for me, she resonates with a lot of my thinking and a lot of my experiences, and she speaks about it so precisely and
Mm.
accurately. I could probably spend years with her, but a cup of coffee would be okay too. So
Brilliant.
that would be my answer.
Superb. I mean, and finally, Dana, I mean, how can people find out more? How can they get in touch with you or find out more about your story? We'll have the links to your book and things like that in the show notes. But where do people go
Perfect.
to find you and to find out more about your story and how they can connect?
Yeah, absolutely. The book is on Amazon. You'll provide the link.
Yeah.
Social media, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Dana S. Diaz, or Dana S. Diaz author, depending on the format, but I try to be pretty available. I also have a website, danasdiaz.com,
Yeah.
where you have access to buy the book there. I have a blog there. You can click to contact me directly, but I am very open with, you know, anybody that wants to get in touch with me. I've had attorneys get in touch with me, I've had victims get in touch with me, message me on any one of those platforms, email me through the website. You know, I will help in whatever way I can, or give whatever advice or answer any questions that I can to the best of my ability based on my experiences. But I absolutely do want people to know that I am reachable. And on the social media, I do advertise where I'm having book signings and such. If you wanted to meet me in person, I do actually spend time, even if there is a line, I like to spend time with every single person. I want to hear stories. I want to give you a hug if you need it. We all need to be there for each other, and be a little more human towards each other. We all need that. So.
Yeah, what a message. I mean, I think we can all learn a lot from that. And I mean, thanks again for sharing your story, not only with me and with the audience here, but for putting yourself out there and for using that experience to reach out to the world and hopefully make a difference. And I think you found some amazing leveraging points, as well as making yourself available to people who might just want that little bit of confidence to tip themselves safely into that next space. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Dana. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you again.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.